All right, I guess we can get started. Thank you, everyone, for joining this session. Welcome all panelists. Thank you once again for participating in this exciting session. So just to introduce myself, I'm the Radiological Society of Connecticut. We have a resident and fellow section, which is a part of the Radiological Society of Connecticut, and RSC itself is an ACR state chapter. We have these members as part of the Executive Council for this year. And we have our newest member, Kevin, who is not in this picture in these headshots, but he's here physically. So we can give a shout out to Kevin. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the council. So Kevin is a new liaison for UConn. So we have deliberately designed or at least have members from all participating programs within Connecticut. So if you are from Connecticut and if you're interested in contributing or even engaging, or even if you have suggestions for future programs and events, feel free to reach out to any of the member liaisons or any of us. I think most of us are on Twitter, or there's definitely a way to get a hold of us, but the best way would be to reach out to one of your colleagues from your radiology programs. And we will be seeking applications for the new Executive Council sometime in spring or early summer. And we will send out a notification in case you're interested in being a part of the Executive Council for the next academic year. Faize and Jade were the past president and secretary, respectively, of this council, and we are eternally grateful for their help and in guiding us as we transition to the new Executive Council this year. And they are still always really helpful in whenever we have been planning to organize all these sessions. So shout out to them, and special thanks to them for being part of this panel as well. And with that brief introduction, now I'm going to introduce all the panelists today. Thank you once again for being a part of this panel. We, on behalf of RSC Radiological Society of Connecticut, RFS, we welcome you all. So we have Dr. Jade Anderson, who's a Chicago native, and she underwent her undergrad in Hampton University in Virginia, and then she did her med school at Boston University through early medical school selection program. After that, she actually did ortho at Ohio State University for 2 years, and then she switched to radiology. And she just finished her residency in past June at Norwalk Hospital in Norwalk, Connecticut. And she's now a fellow in MSK at University of Wisconsin, Musculoskeletal Radiology. And she will be staying on as faculty at the university after completing her fellowship. Welcome, Jade. Our next panelist is Dr. Anish Gonchigar. He's a graduate of University of Maryland School of Medicine. He completed his diagnostic radiology residency at Yale New Haven Hospital and is currently an independent IR resident at Northwestern Hospital. Welcome, Dr. Gonchigar. Benjamin Jang, he's the chief radiology resident at Yale. He's from Kansas and went to college and medical school at University of Kansas. He will be going to Johns Hopkins for Neuroradiology Fellowship, and he's currently doing his mini fellowship in breast imaging and intervention. Welcome, Dr. Jang. Our next panelist is Jake Mandel. He's a fourth-year resident at Yale, and he's from Long Island, New York, and went to St. George University for medical school, after which he did a general surgery intern year at Mount Sinai in New York. and he'll be going to Cornell for body fellowship next year. And welcome, Dr. Mandel. And last but not the least, Dr. Faize Sodagari is a breast imaging fellow at Mass General. She was born and raised in Tehran, where she received her medical training after moving to the United States in 2015. And before her radiology residency at Yale, she finished a 2-year radiology research fellowship at Northwestern, followed by a 1-year internship at Montefiore in New York. She has been an active member of several radiology organizations and has previously served as the president of RFS section of the Radiological Society of Connecticut. Welcome, Dr. Sodagari. With that, we can start with our questions. So the format of this discussion would be that we have some preset questions that I would like all the panelists to answer. And once we are done with those questions, we can take any questions from the audience. If you have any questions, you can either type it in the chat box, or we'll give you an opportunity to ask after we are done with all these questions. So, and you can answer in any order that you like, but I would like everyone to provide their perspective for every question. So the first question is, naturally, once you've started your radiology residency, or somebody who might be even in their prelim year, what advice would you give to someone on day one of their residency, or what advice would you give to the current R1s with regards to preparing for a fellowship or picking a fellowship? And I wish somebody answered this question to me when I was a first year. So I think, yeah, you can get started, or we can go alphabetically. Maybe like Dr. Anderson can start.
So for me, it was kind of natural pick for musculoskeletal imaging because I was an orthopedic surgery resident. So I kind of just stayed along that route. So actually it'd be nice for the others to kind of touch on how they kind of fell into which specialty they were deciding on. But I would say just be kind of cognizant of keeping an open mind as a first year. You know, you're going through all of your rotations and just, you know, going in there and taking it all in as much as you can and just try to figure out, is this for you? Because I do think each of the specialties within our specialty does have a little bit of a personality match. So I think that's something to be aware of. And then the other thing is, I would honestly, if you know you want to do a research fellowship, or I know some of the neuro fellowships have research attached to them and they're 2 years, then that's something to be aware of. You want to kind of get a jump start on your research, and also identify, you know, 3 to 4 attendings that would potentially be writing you recommendations, because you don't have a lot of time between first year, usually second year is full of call, and then beginning of third year is when you're applying. So it's a short time between when you kind of start radiology residency and you have to make that decision. So identify some letter writers, and then, you know, go in there with an open mind, but got to kind of figure it out quickly.
Great, thanks. Maybe Dr. Gonchigar. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. Dr. Gonchigar. So in terms of advice for starting residency, I don't know. I mean, yeah, definitely, you know, echoing all the stuff that Jade said, you know, try to kind of, you know, find what you're looking for. But R1 is kind of like, you know, you're kind of just trying to get your bearings within diagnostic radiology itself. So, you know, there's some time associated with that. I wouldn't stress too much. I feel like, you know, I think I knew pretty much immediately that I wanted to do IR, but, you know, some of my colleagues took a little bit longer to figure out what they wanted to do, but it all ended up being okay for the most part. So, you know, just take your time, try to get your bearings in radiology. It'll all work out.
Okay, great. Thanks. Dr. Jang?
Oh yeah, it's kind of similar to what people are saying, you know, like keep an open, different mind to different specialties. Just really try to learn all the different types of subspecialty as you rotate through, and try to get assessed for like what you like the most or least. You know, I think at the end of the day, you are like a radiologist, you know, especially if you're thinking more like private practice, you there's a very good chance that to read everything. You know, think about that you will have to read everything, maybe possibly, and but it just depends. You know, if you feel like if you're starting weak at a certain section, you want to do more focus on that, you could do that too. But for me personally, it's not like I really loved neuroradiology, but just it felt like that most felt comfortable, and I do like the fact that the subspecialty itself has like a lot of more higher end modality imaging than some of the other subspecialties. So
Great, thanks. And Dr. Mandel?
Yeah, thank you for having me. Yeah, everyone has a different approach to residency. I would say the most important thing, obviously, is figure out early on what works for you. Everyone's different. In the first 2 years, I would focus mainly on service. Obviously, people are going to do research and volunteer work. Just make sure you don't spread yourself too thin. There's a lot to know. I think that's the most, radiology can be intimidating both practically and what you have to know for core. So identify, your strengths early. And like everyone else here, I'll just echo their sentiment. Keep an open mind with regard to specialty. I came in wanting to do IR, then I didn't know what I wanted to do, and ultimately landed on body. And so it's okay to not know. I know that's one of the later questions as well. But in general, don't forget to take care of you. Make time for yourself. And there's so much to know in radiology. And you have obviously you need to pass the core, but you do have your career to iron out things that you're to learn everything essentially. So make time for yourself, and practice makes perfect. Consistency, repetition, and it doesn't happen overnight. So make time for studying. I think that's the most important thing. Pass the core, and identify weaknesses and tackle them early as well. And I think Jade mentioned identifying mentors or letter writers early. That's a really important thing too. And for those R1s out there, read War Machine before third year.
Great, thanks. And Dr. Sodagiri?
So they're all great advice, so I'm not going to repeat those. The only thing that I personally liked and I think would be helpful is if they are debating between two different subspecialties, or if they have something in mind, it would be good to get involved in those subspecialty societies in part of their RFS, or attend their annual meetings and those kind of things where you can network and actually evaluate to see if you like that or not, or even general radiology meetings if you're going to RSNA or ARS meeting that are more general. See if you like the sessions that are in that specific subspecialty and whether you enjoy type of work they are talking about or the research that's going on in that subspecialty, and it will give you a better insight. Trying to establishing relationship with mentors, as Jake mentioned, is really important, both for you to build a reputation for yourself so they can know you, and they will and would be able to give you a more personalized recommendation, and also to connect you to other programs or their friends or other colleagues in different institutions that you may be interested to go to. So it will help establishing connections and network.
Great, thank you everyone. So the next question is, when is the optimal time to decide pick a fellowship? I know there's no clear answer here, but I would just like to gain perspectives, or maybe you guys can tell how it was in your case and you have different perspectives. Maybe
I think that,
sorry, go ahead.
I think that kind of ties in, kind of with the last question. I think the optimal time would be the latter half of your second year, because you are applying that beginning part of your third year. So you want to kind of get everything shored up. You want to, identify who's going to be writing your letters, et cetera. So I think that latter half of second year is a good time to make your final decision. That is so soon. I'm so sorry.
How about the others? Dr. Gonchigar?
Sooner is always better than later, but like I said before, even if you kind of decide, late on, like I know people who decided like basically at the kind of beginning of their R4 year, and they still match great fellowships. Obviously, it makes it harder if you're like doing one that's like through the match itself versus like out of the match. But yeah, I mean, sooner is better than later.
Yeah, like Anish said, I personally, I think I chose like towards the end of second year, so I think that'd be a pretty good time.
Yeah, obviously earlier is better because then you could set yourself up if you want to identify mentors or participate in research. But if you're really undecided, I would say the latest would be the end of R2 or middle end of R2. Try to get a taste for each service, what you like and really what you don't like about each specialty, right? Because I had a mentor in med school when I was trying to pick a residency to apply to, and they were like, which thing about that particular specialty could you tolerate the most? What's the worst thing about it, and could you do that? So I would think about what you like and don't like as you're doing each service, but try to decide by middle of R2.
Okay, great. Thank you. And
one thing I just want to add about this, so there are some subspecialties that you may not rotate as first year, like breast imaging was in our program, or cardiac. There were rotations that you would get exposed to in second year. So if you think you're interested in those subspecialties, you can ask the program to schedule you earlier in the year. So that's something to keep in mind.
yeah, that's
to try to get those early in your second year so you can finalize your decision.
Definitely, great. Third question, and I think this is pretty important because nowadays RFS is everywhere. Every society has their RFS, RSNA, ARRS, ACR. So what's the best advice that you can give for volunteering opportunities in various societies? How to find them? How to make contacts, and basically how to be sort of like an insider. And I unfortunately I had no idea of navigating the RFS personally. So in my R1 year, and then later on, I also, because during those years, because of COVID, we didn't have any in-person, so networking was always an issue. But we would like to hear from you guys. I know Jade is extremely active in all the societies, including AMA, which is, I don't think a lot of us or any of us would have that distinction. So maybe we can start with Dr. Anderson.
So one of my favorite activities is networking. And I know that's a random thing to say, but I think like when you go to these conferences and you go to see a talk, there's multiple talks throughout the day, and you just go up to the speaker after and be like, hey, I was really interested in this, or can you tell me more about this? And then everyone you kind of just talk to wants to give you their information for some reason. And so I have like all these business cards that I never look at again, but like I have them, just in case. But then people you really connect with, they're like, hey, we're going out later to this. Do you want to join us? And then that's how you kind of make those connections. I would say that's like how you should kind of approach going to meetings, going to sessions that you like, that you're interested in, and then just talking to people around you while you're there, which I know is counterintuitive for the radiologist, but I think it makes a big difference, and you have a good time, and then you just want to go again because you want to see those same people again and again. Like I was hoping to see Faiza both at RSNA and ARS, but she's not able to go this year, so I'm sad.
Going to RSNA for 2 days.
Oh, okay, I'll see you there. I'll see you there.
RSNA.
I think I piggyback on what Jade mentioned. The societies are really good to get involved with. Some of the societies have more active trainees sections, some don't. So depending on what you like for example, ACR is in very advocacy, and they have active chapters that trainees can get involved with. But some societies are not that active in terms of their trainee section, but they're all open. They have annual call for volunteers that people can apply to them. Just keep track of when usually those things happen. If you If you're interested in a specific topic, follow them on social media, try to check their websites every now and then and see what's going on. If you have a mentor that's a part of their executive team, or you're active in those subspecialties, that's also something that I personally had trouble with, difficulty with actually approaching other people and expressing my interest. But that's a really great way to actually express your interest in joining special initiative or group or volunteer opportunity. It's good not to spread too thin and be everywhere, but not actually have a role or a title or actual responsibility, so you can show your work. So it's good to be a little bit strategic as well, even though there may be a lot of fun being involved in many things, but just make sure you're at least in one or two of these many things. You are an official member, or someone that can present an outcome or something that you can present as what you've done.
Great. Maybe we can go subspecialty specific. Like, what advice can you give on someone interested in, say, breast fellowship, since you're speaking, related to the societies, as a future breast fellowship applicant?
So, for example, in breast imaging, Society of Breast Imaging has a RFS section. They have some activities for RFS, and they also have these case of the months that people and trained residents can submit cases, so you can get those. But most of their activities is centered around the SBI meeting, so that's where I would start with, and then apply for their call for volunteers for the actual committee. The committee itself is very competitive to get in as a resident. So if I personally applied 2 times and they rejected me, so it's yeah, if you get any rejection when you apply to serve on any committee, don't be discouraged. I personally was very disappointed and,
But are you talking about
frustrated, but these things happen for their RFS section of the
the RFS is
SBI.
that competitive. Interesting.
Yeah. When it gets to those societies, subspecialty societies, the spots are very limited, and it's really hard to get on the committee. And so it may not be a great start, but once you're active in other societies, so ACR chapters are easier to get in and be active. And once you build a reputation for yourself, then it may get easier to get on the more competitive roles.
Hopefully that should raise the interest or a competitiveness for RSC RFS next year. Okay. What about MSK specific? I know you said give general remarks, but anything MSK specific?
Yeah, so I think, so our main meeting is the Society of Skeletal Radiology, and I actually think it was really hard to kind of break into, because before last year, residents weren't allowed to go. You had to be a fellow, or you had to be an attending, and not just an attending, you have to be reading at least 60% MSK in order to attend the Society of Skeletal Radiology meeting. So it doesn't matter. So I think the first 50 residents are allowed to go. And so I signed up quickly last year. And they have the spot for 8 residents that they sponsor every year, but that's not included. So you can apply through that. The deadline for that ended this year, October 31st. But for next year, just to be aware of anyone who's interested in MSK, they do sponsor a few residents to come to the meeting. This year, the first 50 after that to sign up, it is in Savannah, Georgia, and it's in March. I think it's the week of March 26th or so. But once you're there is basically everyone is like a giant family, and there's private practice people there, there's academic people there. Because the radiology job market is so hot right now, I was literally talking to so many people, and everyone was trying to sell me a job. So that was really nice. But I think Society of Skeletal Radiology, it's a harder one to think about.
Okay. How about neuro?
I know there are 2 big neuro societies. I think the biggest one's the ASNR, and other ones like ASFNR, like American Society of Functional Neuroradiology. And I'm sure there are ways to get involved with those societies, but I personally can't really comment because I was never really involved with them. Sorry, guys.
All right, any body specific, Dr. Mandel?
Yeah, same here. The main society is a Society of Abdominal Radiology. They do have an RFS section. I personally did not participate, and so I cannot comment either, but you have had some great insight from our colleagues who are speaking. So I think that general insight applies to all of the different subspecialties.
Great. And I know SIR is extremely active, and but any advice for IR applicants?
Echoing Ben and Jacob, SIR exists. I did not participate.
Oh, okay.
So I was active in SAR and SIR, just unrelated. They and so there are active RFS that you can get on. The only thing I wanted to mention was so these societies usually have awards or scholarships or something for trainees. Just keep looking for those things. If you're R1, just list the societies that you may want to be involved and see if they have any awards or scholarships or anything that you can apply to and get those things. AUR has scholar program. So anything that provides opportunities for awards, grants, some sort of sponsored attending at different meetings and those kind of things, try to keep a list for yourself and plan for them beforehand. If you need to talk to your programs, if they have to only, for example, nominate one resident, try to let them know you're interested and try to meet the criteria by the time there is a deadline. All those things are important for your CV and for application, and also for something to talk about when interview comes.
Great. Thank you everyone for your insight. The next big question, again, research, how much, what type, how much time, and how to balance that with learning and responsibilities, and how important is it for fellowship application per se and in general. And I think this might be very subspecialty specific, like some specialties might prefer people who have done some research, whereas some specialties don't care as much. So we can again start with Dr. Anderson and move alphabetically.
Yeah, so I left ortho because I was so burned out. So I didn't do any research in radiology residency. In fact, the minimum I had to do was like a QI project, and I did that kicking and screaming. So, but I got it done because I wanted to graduate. But yeah, I didn't do any, and I do have my research from my ortho days, obviously, so that was still on my application, but I didn't do any in residency.
Okay.
Sure, I'll go next. I did like a moderate amount of research, IR related. I think it helped. I think it definitely helped. I think I think IR. I don't want to say it expects it, but I would say the overwhelming majority of people applying to IR do at least some degree of research.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I did a good amount of decent amount of research, but a lot of them were like non-neuro related, especially like early on. I think some were like quality improvement and like COVID related, whatever kind of came along. But from my seniors, when I was applying, I think they always did tell me like you should just do at least like one presentation or something on your subspecialty that you're applying, just so that you can have something to talk about and show your interest to the program you're applying.
Okay, great. Dr. Mandel?
Yeah. So just a caveat, and I'll get into this in one of the follow-up questions, but like body is not ACGME accredited, so there's no ERAS. It's a lot different. So for instance, I don't really know what all the programs are looking for because I applied to 3, interviewed at 1, and got that offer and accepted it. So like I didn't have to wait for a match. I didn't have to rank programs. It's a lot different. So I'll get into that later. I did a lot of research in med school, but it was mainly IR related research. And then I finished a pretty big paper for a pretty big journal during residency, but it wasn't at my institution. I have no idea if that played a role in me getting interviews or getting the program of my choice, but it can't hurt. I would just kind of do the heat of warning thing from earlier, that just make sure you don't overstretch yourself. You don't want to overcommit to research at the expense of your ability to perform on service or perform well on core. So just be where, you know, I think research will help. I don't totally know if it's really necessary to have a crazy amount of research for body, but I think it will help.
Great.
And obviously, if you're into academics, it's almost a necessity.
Of course, yeah. Thanks.
Just in general, getting into fellowship in radiology is not necessarily too hard. So I don't think you have to have research when you're applying for fellowship, but it helps, as my friends mentioned. If you are coming from a program that's not as competitive when they see your application, or if it's coming from a smaller program that your mentors in that subspecialty in your institution may not be known across the country, then having research presentations and doing more is really important if you have a specific program that you want to target, or it's a more competitive area that you want to go to. So for example, if you want to go to, I'm just randomly saying, so for example, in California, UCSF, you specifically want to go to that program and you don't have a mentor with connection in that program, then definitely having something in your application to show your interest and your activity in that subspecialty helps. About doing research as first year, just be cautious. Don't say yes to the first attending that offers a research project. Just wait for a little bit, get a hang of residency, and know attendings a little bit better before you get involved in too many projects, or the project that you may not necessarily be interested, but you just didn't feel like you can say no. So yeah.
That's a great point, and I have a question for everyone. How do you, like, as you know, as someone early in the residency, how would you decide that, you know, whether I should turn this down? Because I think saying no when you're a R1 or an R2 is much difficult than saying yes, especially if you don't have a lot of opportunities, and it's just probably might be a little difficult. So any perspectives or inputs on that?
I start. First of all, see what sort of research you're offering, if the topic is a hot topic in the field or not, if at your institution there is any infrastructure for doing that type of research, or is it just some aspirational idea or something that doesn't have a concrete question to answer with a known time frame to get from start to finish. Those are hard to evaluate when you're first year. So having a kind of a resident mentor in a program at upper levels may be helpful to just see what they think and what would be a good project or a good mentor to work with. I think, having someone in program at higher level would definitely help with just evaluating and assessing what it is and what this project may add to your portfolio, or what sort of things you should be looking for or be a little bit worried about when it comes to working with a specific person or a specific project. But I know it's hard. That's really
great. Thank you.
Yeah, I could just really quickly, because I do know that feeling of being in the reading room next to an attending and they see an interesting case or something, and then they just turn to you and they're like, do you want to do research on this? And it's like, I'm not doing the specialty and I'm focused on studying and I don't know if I really want to do this. So I think, first of all, I think it's mature and professional to be able to decide whether something is right for you or not. And if you don't feel like it's right for you, to be okay saying this is not right for me. But an easy way to do it is, I really appreciate the opportunity, but can I have some time to think about it and follow up with you? And either it'll just get lost and you forget about it and neither of you follow up, or you actually reach out and let them know whether you want to do it. So I don't feel pressure to do things you don't want to do. I think it's better to say no up front and explain why. You know, I'm focused on my studying. I already have a research project. This is not the specialty I'm pursuing, and I don't know. I want to kind of figure out what research I want to do first. Better to be honest and upfront early than to accept it, then get 2 months into it, realize you're bogged down, and you signed up for it without really thinking too much about it, and then withdraw from it. So I think that the former would be better.
Great, thank you. Right. I guess we can move to the next question if anybody else. All right. Next question is again a big one. Tips on ERAS and non-ERAS applications. I guess we can start with ERAS and then discuss a bit about non-ERAS applications a little bit later once you're done with ERAS. So any application specific advice on how to structure your application? I mean, because I'm also going through this right now, I've been having certain questions like where exactly to put what and how to highlight your application in the most optimum way so that the things that you want to project or the bigger achievements are highlighted, and the things that are like kind of low priority are still there, but that's not they're not the selection committee is not lost in reading maybe if you have like a big original research that you've published, and that should not appear somewhere at the bottom, and you'll have like 2 or 3 case reports at the top. So how to sort of structure that plus volunteer experiences and everything. Yes, we can start with again alphabetically. I believe MSK has ERAS.
Yeah, we have the SSR basically published a common application. And so you kind of just fill that out. So it's not like I had to honestly think about it, if that makes sense. And you have your personal statement that you kind of personalize for each program. But other than that, they have a common app for that reason. And then anybody who wanted something additional, I think like MGH was one. And then I think it was BIDMC who was another. They wanted some outside stuff. And I was like, you know what? I don't feel like stroking anybody's ego. I don't want it that bad. So then I just didn't send an application there.
Okay. But any other perspective on MSK specific application? I've not seen the MSK application, so I don't know how it looks and how it is, how the structure is.
I'm literally trying to remember, but I honestly just think it was you fill out your application, which was a common one, like, things you were involved in, stuff like that. Then you attach your CV. I know I had to take a special photos. People wanted a passport photo that was a certain size. And then I'm pretty sure that's it. It wasn't bad.
Okay.
Just a personal statement, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, great. How about IR application?
Sure. So IR uses ERAS. It's the December cycle. So most of the, I don't remember what date you submit, but most of my interviews were like kind of like January, February, few into March, couple into April. In terms of just general ERAS advice, a lot of the program directors are reading just a ton of applications, so just try to make it fairly succinct. ERAS is nice because it actually carries over the information that you submitted when you were using ERAS to apply for residency. So I mean, I kind of got rid of certain things, like tried to make it like like stuff that actually was, you know, meaningful to me. I you know, I tried to emphasize research a little bit more. I tried not to be like, just in terms of style, this is just my take. I don't have any real, you know, any data to really support it, but I would assume that program directors are tired of reading, you know, like long paragraphs and stuff. Just try to make it really kind of like brief, like you know, get to the point and all of that.
Okay, great, thanks.
For neuro, it's like no different in that format than when you did for your residency application. But you know, kind of echoing what people said, keep it pretty succinct, to the point. Don't want to get too lost in these like applications, because these people have to go through a ton of them. Do that, but also note that like whatever you guys put there, you know, it's a really open game, and whenever they ask you about it, you really have to, even though you maybe talked about it a ton of times, bring that enthusiasm, or at least you can talk about it well enough that they can understand why you did it, even if it's like something not related to the subspecialty you're applying. So that's my tip for that.
That's actually, I just wanted to add to that. That's a great point. They will ask you about specific lines. I mean, a lot of the people who are interviewing you have not actually reviewed your application, and like when you during the process of the interview, they'll be looking down and asking you about specific like, you know, bullet points. So, you know, have an explanation or spiel for every bullet point that you have.
I think it's interesting you guys mentioned that, because I thought during my interviews, it was mostly me asking them questions. Like it was very much a casual conversation with each of our interviewers. And we talked about random things. We talked about the area, because I think they're also really trying to recruit you as well. So I thought it was more me asking questions than them asking me, but I definitely agree. If you do put it on your application, be prepared to talk about it just in case.
Great.
Yeah, I think it was still conversational for the most part, but there were definitely like even like in the midst of a conversation, like there would be a few, like I would say that they would all, depends on who.
And what was your experience like? Were most of the interviewers reading your applications as they were interviewing, or had people done their homework before interviewing?
It's very different, like different program or different people specifics. I can't, very different.
Okay. Anything body specific, Dr. Mandel?
Yeah. So it's actually is pretty specific. I'm gonna be really quick. I'll try to be really quick. So body's a lot different. It's not ACG and me. There's no ERAS. You apply, you get an interview, you decide to take it or not. You interview, and then they do or do not offer you an opportunity to go there, and you could accept it on the spot. So that's why I would, by the end or middle or end of R2, I would know what you want to do with regard to body. And try to get an idea of what you care about. I mean, I can't tell you how to choose which programs to apply to, which programs to go to, especially if you're targeting top programs, which are similar to top medical schools and top radiology residencies. Unless if you're targeting those programs, you're probably splitting hairs between which ones will train you better. So whether or not a particular program has a certain modality that you want to be expert in, or there are different body fellowships, right? There's body MRI, body interventions, body with mammo. And so these are all personal decisions. However, in terms of specific information about the application process, so in April, May, I would begin to look at the websites of the programs you're interested in, because they will start to update the information on that website to reflect that academic year's specifications, what you'll need for your application, and how the process will go. They might even update, we're not accepting applications because we are filling our program with internal applicants, or we have one spot rather than 3. So that's April, May. In June, they should open up their applications. You can email ahead of time. The program coordinators are super helpful. Ask them when they start accepting applications, what the process is. They might give it to you in advance. Generally, August interviews will go out, and they're not allowed to start interviewing you until November. So the first week of November is when like all the interviews will happen. And then during that week, they'll give you a chance to interview. So for me, I wanted to go to New York. I picked 3 of the best programs in New York. One of them, people kind of were really excited about when talking to me about it. New people from there connected me with attendings there. I spoke with an attending and a current fellow there, and it seemed like a great place, which is Cornell. I put Cornell first because for my interviews, because if they gave me the option to go, I wanted to accept it and not interview anywhere else. And that's what happened. And the last 2 things I'll say. Number 1, it was great advice to identify letter writers early, but keep up with them, right? If you ask them to write you a letter, like kind of let them know what the process will be like so that they're not on vacation for a month in June when you need them to submit your application, your letter. And then the last thing is, oh yeah, so if you do choose to accept an invite on your first interview or your second, and then you have 5 others lined up, it sounds unprofessional to cancel an interview like at midnight when the interview's at 7 in the morning, but from word of mouth from other body applicants, this is a known thing. They understand that people are going to be dynamically accepting they're dynamically accepting fellowship offers, and that they might have cancellations. In fact, they might be giving offers and then, prematurely before they're done with their interviews too. So just to recap, June, they start accepting applications. August, the interviews go out. And then November, the first week, is when the interviews begin. And then you'll actually know that week. And just FYI, anyone who does body, the application process is amazing because November of your core year, where you're going, what you're doing. And you don't have to think about fellowship during core review. Like it's solely core review. You're not worried about matching or ranking. There's none of that added stress. So.
Great. That sounds great. And do the programs give you like a grace period before which you can accept or decline their offer?
Yeah. So long story short, many years ago, the best applicants would get taken off the market really early because the best programs would go after the best applicants and kind of give them offers early. And it wasn't fair because then there was that trickle down effect where programs went unfilled because they didn't have anyone to interview or they didn't have basically the same equal share to the applicants. So all the programs, I think in the society that I actually don't know what group organization they're in, but they kind of came to an agreement that in November was when they would interview. And then if they gave an offer, they would wait a week. They would give that week for that offer to kind of come to fruition and let the applicant make a decision. So they leveled the playing field a bit. So yeah, and you can ask also if you have anyone, you can message me directly because I'm kind of rushing, even though it's a lot of information, but you can email me or message me. I'm sure we'll give that information at the end if you have any other questions about it.
Great. That was great information. Thank you. And Dr. Sodagari, anything very specific?
Sure, yeah. So breast doesn't use RS, but it's in match. So those things are separate from each other. So application, whether it's through RS or not, is one thing, but whether they participate in match or not, that's a different thing. Yeah, breast is not RS, but it's match. So the way it works, Society of Breast Imaging has a kind of common application form that some of the programs use. A lot of programs have their own forms, or they want both. So, and the documents they want, it's different for each program. Some want you to email the application material to them. Some want you to fill a form through a portal they have. Some want you to mail it in person, or just physical mail. I think they are going away. I hope so by this time. I didn't apply. There were a couple that you had to mail actual applications. Nope, not for me. And then, so yeah, either email or just they have some way. The problem with breast, I think when I was applying, a friend of mine was doing MSK and he had a similar situation because different programs wanted different things. Then you have to keep track of those documents. I created folders for me and I put those documents for each program in a separate folder. So by the time I needed to either attach those forms or upload it, I didn't have to go through all the documents to find what they want. The other thing that I experienced was the program updated their website in between the time that I checked and the time that I had to email that. So the email for the person that I was supposed to send documents had changed in the meantime. So last minute before you is sent, just double check their website to make sure you're sending to the most updated information. One other issue that I faced was, so because it's separate application and not through ERAS, your letter writers and your references have to send the letters to each program separately.
Wow.
And because it's waived, it's not like they can give it to you and you send it to program. It has to be sent either by them or an administrative staff in your program, which was the pain, a true pain for my application, because the admin support at that time, it was during COVID, everything was so messed up. People were not physically there. So I ended up being in a horrible situation because, so eventually I tried to have the admin assistant for the program director that has to send the letters to get the letter from the other mentors. So I asked the breast attendings to send their letter to that person. And when she is supposed to send out the letter from my PD, she also attaches the letters from the other one. And I think that's the way to do it. But it ended up being a kind of a disaster that for months I was just getting emails from different programs that, oh, we haven't received your letters yet. And I kept trying to confirm that whether she sent those letters, and it was just so back and forth. So every single program reached out to me asking for letters, even though I was told that the letters were sent. So just make sure you track and get confirmation that they truly sent your letters to that program, and confirm with the receiving program to confirm that they have everything that they're supposed to get. So that's thing. One portal thing, one of the programs that was using their own portal that I had to upload, I don't know what the problem was. It never got submitted, even though I remember filling out things through the portal. So just follow up with the programs. It's a very painful process, especially if you're applying to multiple programs. So at some point, just decide not to apply to too many programs. Just keep it short. Have a good mix of programs you're interested in, like the program that it's your reach, the program it's your goal program, or a program that is just a safety backup program. To have a good mix of those and then follow up with them. If you're truly interested in one program, specific program, reach out to them, let them know, so they make sure that they take a good look at your application. If you don't hear back from a program by, let's say, January, just follow up with them, express your interest again, and kind of thing. It happened to one of my programs. It was I think February, and I hadn't heard back from them. So I emailed and said, I'm very interested. And they said, oh, we already gave you an interview. And I said, no. So turned out their admin never sent me the invitation, even though invitation was granted. So things happen. Just keep track of when with non-ERAS application, it's a bit more painful, but that's what it is.
Wow,
but you don't pay any application fee. That's a good thing. ERAS, I think they have to pay.
The best feeling is when the your interviews start coming in, so you know your application was okay, you know they got it. That's the best feeling.
Okay, I know we have a few more questions lined up, but quickly, since you brought up sending that intent or email expressing your interest in that program, what is the optimal time according to you all? When do we say that, send the letter of intent to the program after applying?
So I'll answer this. For IR, I would say probably the best time is 1 to 2 weeks before the match closes and before the program directors submit their rank lists. I know that that you just asked a question, but I do want to just kind of quickly give my spiel about applying for IR. So definitely echoing what Faiza said. So kind of trust but verify when it comes to letter writers. So I found out from one program that a letter that I thought was sent correctly had not been. So really kind of make sure that letters are sent correctly. Make sure that people use, if there's like a particular form that needs to be used, really just like make sure that they do. Something that I always do is, if you need, say, 3 letters of recommendation or 4, I always ask like two extra people, just in case the 2 people flake out or aren't reliable. I always ask more people than I need for letters of recommendation. Let's see, like with regards to IR specifically, the truth is, yeah, IR is fairly competitive. I would say some things that actually surprised me when I was applying was, it actually does help to have like a well-known person write your letters. Obviously, like not all of them need to, but like, you know, if there's one person who's kind of nationally known, if they write your letter, the people mention that. I don't know if they actually read the letter, but like they will, you know, they'll say like, so and so wrote a letter, like, oh, how are they doing? Like, you work with them often. So having one of those is good. It'll be hard, like, and you know, don't feel bad if you can't, but if you can, it's definitely helpful. If you can and they actually know you, it's even more helpful. Apply to a lot of programs if you're applying to IR, because it's competitive. Let's see, getting back to the letter of intent. So I don't know how much the letter of intent helps. This is again one of these kind of like speculative things. I have heard, like, just, you know, kind of gossip and things that people say offhand, that there are a few programs, like a few like very well regarded programs that only rank people who send them an email that says that you are my number one. I don't know if that's true. But supposedly that exists. But like, you know, to take it seriously, you know, think about think about like, you know, what matters to you, and if you can have someone call on your behalf, I'm sure that doesn't hurt.
And just one letter of intent to one program.
Yes, don't ever send more than one. That's terrible form. Don't do that.
And have any of you sent any letters prior to interviews, or saying that, hey, I would like to interview at your program, before even you were offered an interview, or anytime through the interview process?
I think if you have any specific interest in a program and you don't hear back from them until a reasonable time, it doesn't hurt to reach out to them and reiterate your interest. Don't say anything about I'm going to rank you or anything. It's not a time to talk about ranking, just expressing interest. And if you have any specific tie to the region, to that program, just mention that, a specific tie. And you can also reach out to some people if you know, or your mentor knows someone, especially if it's at the time of a conference that they may see each other or something like that. You can ask your mentors to mention your interest in that program.
Great, thanks. Now, next topic is personal statements. General tips on personal statements: how long, how short, what to write, what not to write.
Maybe I can help. I should have actually said that I also interview for residency, so I actually interview a lot of the med students application. But I think especially for fellowship application of personal statements, I would just keep it as short as possible. I think mine was only probably like a half a page.
Wow.
Because I don't know, because a lot of times I would say keep it vanilla, if anything. Don't try to be too risky, because I think personal statements can only like hurt you more than help you. So I'll just try to keep it safe and be really short to the point on personal statement.
Yeah, so I have some tips. I don't really enjoy writing personal statements. I think someone told me this when I was in med school, and I think it does hold true. Like 95% of the time, they won't help or hurt you. 2.5% of the time, they'll hurt you, and 2.5% of the time, they'll help you. In other words, you could say things that can kind of push a program away, or you could say things that really allure them. And most of the time it just is inconsequential, but maybe shed some light about you and maybe helps with the, them having talking points during the interview. With regard to my body personal statement, I probably spent, maybe I wrote it and then I refined it over about a month, and I had some people review it. You're really setting the stage to kind of explain, it is a statement about you personally and what makes you great and what makes you a strong resident and where you want to be as an attending and how body will help you get there, or how your particular subspecialty will help you get there. And you can also specify things you're looking for in a program. I'm interested in being, an academic abdominal radiologist, and I want to go to a program with, that has strong research and also robust clinical training and something like that. Why body is like something, I think why any subspecialty is something people forget to even answer sometimes in the personal statement. So I just don't forget that the goal of the personal statement is selling yourself and also explaining why you chose that subspecialty. And just to answer the question before about like intent, I didn't write a letter of intent, although I spoke with people from the program I was most interested in and like let them know how interested I was beforehand. And I don't know if that got back to the program director and their department, but I'm sure it did. But during the interview, and actually someone told me this for med school too, for residency interviews, and I did it then and it worked. I think it worked, and I did it now and it also worked. If you're genuinely interested in a program and in body, if they gave you the offer, you would accept it. I think it's appropriate to like let at least the program director know if you're interviewing with them, I'm very interested in this program, and if given the opportunity to come here, I would accept the offer. Nothing wrong with saying that. Showing interest in a program and having them have that piece of information to go back to discuss with their the recruitment team, I think is valuable. So don't, like, I think honesty, and you don't have to say that either if you're unsure, right? Like, you don't have to tell them I'll accept your offer and say that to every program. I don't think, like Anish said, I don't think that's good form. But I think it's okay to let a program know how interested you are at the interview. I just wouldn't tell every interviewer that, let the program director know, or someone you had great rapport with, and that's it. It'll get back to their committee.
Great, thanks. Anybody else? Dr. Anderson, any inputs on personal statements?
No, I just kind of explained like why I switched out of ortho. So I had that to talk about. And then, what I did in residency and how that kind of sparked and continued on my interest in MSK radiology, and that I had a special interest in doing interventional procedures and ultrasound. So that's basically all I talked about in mine. And it was 3/4 of a page. I just looked. Yeah. So short.
Okay. And like by 3/4, it would be like a font of 10, because font of 8 and 3/4 would be vastly different from.
No, it was a font of 12.
Okay. And single spacing or double spacing?
Single spacing.
Single spacing. Okay, great.
One of the programs I applied to had a specific guide about the space from the side, top, bottom, whatever. And I just wrote it in that specific format and just send it to everyone. Same was for CV. I think MGH had its own CV format you had to fill in. So I basically switched to that format because there was no way I would go back again and update my CV. So I created my CV in their format and send it to everyone. So when you review the program, you just see what they specify in their instructions for non-ERAS applications, and then use the one that's most common.
Great. So, but I think one thing that everybody is agreeing upon is not more than one page. Has anybody written anything more than one page, or any thoughts?
Definitely. You don't want to.
Yeah, definitely less than one page. Like, I think mine was almost maybe 80% of a page, single spaced. Arial, whatever it is, 12 size. So okay. they'll give you some tips and guidance on the website for a particular program.
Right. And just because I'm applying for IR, I know that the ESIR website mentions that they want you to know what what is the case mix at your current institution if you're ESIR? And so to that effect, how did you elaborate on those, on the case mix and the kind of exposure that you hope to get during your ESIR year? This is
I have my personal statement open. Looks like I literally wrote how many procedures I had how many procedures I had done thus far, how many I anticipated doing by the time I graduate. I said they have spanned this to this, and that's it. It was, I think, the three kind of maybe 3 sentences within the context. I didn't get super specific beyond that, but I actually did give numbers.
Okay, so just like a total number of your procedures that you logged.
I wrote like whenever I said like thus far I performed X number of procedures, and I anticipating logging at least X more by the time I graduate. And I said these procedures have spanned this to this, and then they don't care beyond that. And
they don't care about like what case mix you have about and what kind of training or those things.
No. Okay. Their goal is, if they accept you, is to train you. They don't care.
Great, thanks. Right, the next topic is tips during the actual interview, do's and don'ts. And I'm pretty sure this will be highly subspecialty specific, or there might be some general points. So again, we can go alphabetically, starting with Dr. Anderson.
I mean, I would just say general Zoom etiquette. People can tell when you're looking at different screens on your computer. People can tell when you're looking at your phone. So I would say if your screen is on, just like stay engaged, even if you're not really doing anything, if that makes sense, like you're in between and stuff like that. And then I know some of my, while we were switching in between, like the program coordinator or the fellowship coordinator was on there. So just like be prepared to talk to them and make conversation. Like this person will be heavily involved in your life as a fellow if you end up going there. So I would just say, be kind, be engaged, keep your energy. I apologize for my energy. I slept 2 hours last night. Wow. But like, just, yeah, that's what I would say.
Dr. Gonchigar?
Yeah, so
Awesome.
I'll give some general tips. So if I can give insight on Zoom interviews for fellowship, because that's what I did. Pick a location that's going to be predictably quiet with steady internet connection. You don't want to be that person who like loses internet, God forbid, in like the middle of an interview. That would be insane. And check the lighting and, again, the internet connection multiple times before interview day to make sure your setup is comfortable and, again, predictably stable. I would review the program's basic information before the interview. You don't have to go too crazy. And I think that if you sound like you're just reciting things you read off the website, it's going to look it's not going to be authentic and genuine. But having an idea of the program director and the chair or the chief of the department's name is like just basic courtesy, even though they'll remind you during the interview. I would dress well, obviously. Don't forget that your camera's on during the interview, especially during like the introduction and closing when the emphasis is not on you and you might not see yourself on the screen. Don't forget. And I think it's acceptable that like during an intro, if there's a loud noise or you just want to, if you need to step away, have a drink of water or whatever you need to do, it's okay to like turn your camera off for a second. I wouldn't leave it off for an extended period of time, but if you need to turn your camera off to like remain that professional perspective and appearance, I think that's acceptable. If you're not doing it at home and it's going to be a few hours, bring like a small thing of water and a snack. But overall, the body interview that I had at Cornell was like very chill, very conversational. They asked me stuff about my CV. Be prepared to answer things about your CV. I wouldn't put something on your CV that you wouldn't want to talk about during an interview straight up. It was mentioned earlier, but they will ask you. And there's definitely, I don't remember what the discussion was about earlier, but I know someone said that sometimes you ask questions or they'll ask questions. It's both. Some interviewers came in having no idea of anything about me, and they had my application and they were like, "Oh, I see you did your intern year at Mount Sinai. How was that?" Something like that. But then another one came in like, "Oh, I saw that you love to, you're really into this." And and they clearly had read my application beforehand. So there's going to be a mix. Be prepared for anything, but I would say in general, body interview was very relaxed. Having said that, the interviews that I canceled, one of them started at 5:45 in the morning, and there were going to be 8 interviewers, and it was such a relief to cancel that one. But because that was a little intense. But I think in general, the people were really pleasant. You don't get grilled. And like I mentioned earlier, if you know you want to be somewhere location-wise and program-wise, and it feels right during the interview, and you know that that's the place, it's totally okay. And I think actually probably welcomed to say things like, if given the opportunity, I would accept an offer here, or things like that.
Great.
I actually did notice, compared to applying for diagnostic radiology, like residency, applying to like IR, fellowship / independent residency, it was still, while it was overwhelmingly conversational, still I think it was like people did try to, I don't want to say grill, but there were a few people who I think just by virtue of like the nature of differences and like the personalities of people who go into IR and like IR attendings, people did try to kind of like nail you down, and they would ask, they'd ask slightly I don't want to say tougher questions, but there were a few like, what would you do in this scenario type of questions at a couple programs, and sometimes people would be like, would you really rank this program? Would you really come here? Would you really do this? Which I never really noticed for diagnostic radiology. I think it had a little bit more, you were a little bit more aggressive, I would say.
Okay. Did they test your knowledge though, or was it more like just behavioral questions?
What is it? 3 French is 1 millimeter. No one's asking stuff like that. But nobody's asking stuff like that. Good. But like, if you are going to talk about specifics, know what you're talking about.
Can I actually just say really quick, I actually did get a question that I didn't prepare for, and that question was from the program director, who was super sweet and was the person I ended up actually telling I wanted to go there. And so it was a great interview anyway. But she did ask me, she asked me why body, and then she asked me, can you tell me about an experience with a body like a really special case to you that like meant a lot, or like tell me about a memorable case or something like that. And I told her about this esophagram I did, where I found like this very subtle contour irregularity that turned out to be a cancer, and how like the patient was like 48 years old, female, and all she had was like a sticking sensation when she swallowed, and it was like a invasive squamous cell. So I talked about that, and I think I didn't have to be prepared to be like excited about the case that I was talking about, but I think if you're someone who might not have that off the top of your head, I would go on Google and I would literally research like questions asked during radiology interview or fellowship interview, and there are definitely people on Student Doctor Network and Reddit who have asked the same question and have had it answered. And you might get some questions that'll, maybe you can write like a 1 or 2 sentence primer beforehand. You don't have to go too crazy memorizing like huge stories, but having a general idea of certain things to discuss if asked questions is a good idea, because I didn't expect that.
I agree with Jacob actually, because now you're just like make me remember things. So I actually had, like you were saying, I think ours was more conversation. I think interventional is probably like way more difficult to get into, whereas MSK, we have like unfilled positions every year. But that being said, like I had the list of questions, like why our program specifically, you have to have that question for every program, no matter what. And then like, what are you looking for in a fellowship is a very important question to be ready to answer. And what do you have to offer for that program? But then like, they usually give you a schedule, and I had long interview days, like 5 to 8 people a day. And they'll tell you who you're interviewing with. So I would go through and look up each attending and try to find out little things about them. Like I'm looking at my UPMC notes, just like I wrote something down about a green Lamborghini. Not sure why I wrote that down there, but just things to like kind of connect with people on, or I saw you went to Utah and like you did this, et cetera, et cetera. But I also had a list of questions that I asked every single program, and it was about 20 questions long, almost 20 questions long, because again, this was more conversational and they want to know that you're interested in what they had to offer. So, you know, you asked about call, vacation, you know, degree of autonomy, how much peds do I get, et cetera, et cetera. So those are things to think about. And I know specifically for me, I asked about lactation rooms because I wanted to know how they were kind of handling, you know, having women residents or women attendings there at their hospital too.
Great. And this is kind of an extension about the interviews. Any specific tips on virtual interviews? I know you said that we should leave the camera turned on most of the times and just turn it off briefly. Any other tips, maybe like how to, did you have a specific background? Was it like a blurred, or would you like, you know, set it up strategically, or was it like a blank wall?
Yeah, so I personally had, I asked my program for a quiet study space because I wanted to do it in the hospital. I thought in a quiet place in the hospital, the internet would be good and I would know that it'd be quiet. I wouldn't have my fire alarm go off in my apartment or construction. And mine had a white background. I put the blur thing on and that was it. It was a plain small white office and yeah, neutral backgrounds. And I think it goes without saying, but for anyone who does need to hear this, like I would remove all like controversial political takes from anything to do with your application or interviews. You have no idea, you know, who you're interviewing with, what their views are, and it's just not professional or appropriate to like have that in the discussion. So things, if it's controversial, if you wouldn't like post it on, I mean, I actually doesn't kind of apply because some people do post this stuff on social media, but just be, you know, be professional and I wouldn't kind of you know, wear your political affiliations on your sleeve. I just don't think it's the place for that.
Yes.
I would just add about interviews. So in terms of background, I had some calming artwork in my background that I got a lot of comments and questions about it. So it was something to talk about. But I think it's just fine. In one of the interviews, I remember one of the applicants in the background, their spouse was walking around, cooking, moving. As someone that I was just the attendee, I was just thinking, what's going on in there? So unless you're doing those things, I think anything is fine. And most of my interviews were very chill, friendly. The things in breast people ask me a lot of time was about our breast rotation in my institution. So they were asking, oh, which year did you rotate through breast? What do residents do? Do they do procedures or not? So there were questions about what we do at our institution. So get that information if you don't know. So they were asking about different things. And what I was asking, what was important for me was the type of modalities they use, like whether they are using contrast enhanced mammo or not, ABOS or not, so newer modalities, and whether as a fellow you have to go to multiple satellites or not, because breast is like that. The practice of breast in many places is done at outside satellite centers. So as fellow, that's important. In terms of call, whether because a lot of breast programs make you do general call. So those were just some of the questions that I was asking different programs. In terms of CV and questions you may get about your CV, the things I got most was if one of my research projects was something that they are also doing something similar in, or they are interested in, for example, some specific AI application that I've been working on or something like that. I mostly got questions about that one. If they ask you something and you don't know, that's fine, don't sweat it. I remember one of the interviewers asked me about specific results of an abstract that we presented three years ago about, oh, how many % of those patients got that MRI, or how many of them had that finding. I could not remember. It was not something. So I just said, oh, I can't remember off the top of my head, but the overall result of our study was this. And then I checked it. And when I was writing them, the thank you letter, I mentioned that, oh, by the way, about that question, I checked, and that was our whatever percentage of the MR thing. So yeah, don't worry about it if you don't remember, or if there is just very details of something. Yeah, that was
Great. Finally, coming on to the big question again. Tips on creating a rank order list. How do you evaluate the programs? How do you select the programs? What questions do you ask? And just the whole spiel about like how do you pick the right fit for you, and what are the things that you look for. And I'm sure this is highly specialty specific. So we can again go specialty wise.
Okay, I'm just gonna share my screen. So I took basically first I took an objective approach, I guess. So I made rankings of things that were important to me first. So multiple fellows, I didn't want to be the only fellow there. I had to have high volume and high procedure volume. And a lot of MSK programs actually don't do ultrasound, and some of them don't read spine. That's all neuro. So I wanted to make sure I got both of those exposures. Moonlighting was a plus, location, and then like basically women or DEI was important. So I'd go through the radiology or the section and see, and the radiology department to see how many women or Black faculty that they had, because that was important for me. And then like what conferences they offered. And then I fight heavily against scope of practice. So if they appeared to put like PA and NPs first, that was like a big negative. So then like these are some of my notes from, you know, each of the programs. And then I had a total, which was like, oh God, over here. So that was my objective rank list. So then from these totals, I made an objective rank list. And then from my interviews and like my experience there, then I made a subjective rank list. And then programs with ultrasound by rank list, because again, ultrasound intervention was like a big deal for me too. So then I had my final list that I think I ended up with like there. And that's how I kind of attacked my ranking.
Great. That was lovely.
Yeah,
I'll
so
talk about it.
oh yeah, please, Anish.
I had a kind of a running list. I wrote a few notes. Mine were not nearly as kind of comprehensive and quantitative as Jade's, but I did have a list sort of similarly. This is very subjective and personal thing in terms of like how you choose to do it. But for me, like my big thing was program strength. I ranked almost entirely based on what I perceived to be program strength, which was a combination of, you know, how they came across and, you know, the like reputational stuff just from conversations I heard from people and things like that. There were like a few specific things, like particular programs that like really like put me off, and that would bring it down. But like basically at the end of every interview, I would put that particular program somewhere along that running list, that running rank order list, and I would change it a few times. Like I would you know, think maybe I actually like this program better. I would go back, but I would say like my top 5 was pretty solid.
Great. Sure. Dr. Jang.
Oh yeah. So for neuro, it's a bit more different in that there are actually 2-year programs and 1-year programs. And I'll be honest with you, not to ruffle anybody's feathers. I think 2-year programs are a bit of it's just definitely not for me. It's funny. I actually asked some of the people 2-year programs are at MGH, UCSF, and Stanford. I remember asking the interviewers, like, what's the benefit of a 2-year versus 1 year? And the best answer they could give me is like, they could teach me leadership roles. And I was like, what does that mean? And like, we'll tell you how to schedule people. I'm like, I don't want to do that. So yeah, think about that. You're also losing at 1 year of your attending life. And also, if you do it, for example, if you're doing like mammo mini, planning to mammo later, you can't lose. I think you lose your MQSA qualification if you do 2 years. So, but after you get that down, then I just like kind of weighed a combination of, the name, the culture, the volume, and primarily volume was really important because you can really, I felt personally that I can really teach myself most of the stuff as long as I get enough amount of exposure that I know what's wrong, what's normal. And for that volume, I would say that good number is probably like 30 MRs a day. I think that's really important to know as a fellows, because not every place will actually have this kind of number. And I think the volume is really, really important for your training.
Great. Dr. Mandel?
Yeah, so just to not say what's already been said. So like I mentioned earlier, if you're pursuing body, there are all these different types of body fellowship. Some people think body MRO is the way to go because maybe they don't get as much MRI during residency. Body interventions, body with mammo, body with nukes. There might be others that I'm not familiar with. I personally wanted to kind of keep up with my CT and ultrasound skills. And so I was pleased that Cornell didn't have too many options for body. They had body and body mammo, and I didn't want to do the body mammo. So for me, it was just body, general body was the only option there. So I'll be able to kind of keep all my skills up, although they do have an emphasis on MRI. It's just not the whole year. You really just have to figure out what is most important to you. I think that when you're comparing these top programs, other than whether a particular program provides one modality or doesn't, other than that, location and comfort with the program and people. So a lot of that's going to be gauged on the interview, although everyone has their best face on during the interview. Really be on the lookout for how you feel. I'm comfortable at Yale. I love Yale. I didn't want to leave a place that I felt was, comfortable, welcoming, and full of people I know and familiar with and know the place. And so I didn't want to leave that for any place that would be sort of malignant or toxic. And I think you can get a general feel for that from word of mouth and the interview itself. So the last thing I'll say with body is because that whole first week of November is that rolling acceptance of offers. Contrary to medical school applications for residency, where you may have wanted to put programs you preferred in the middle so you can get your feet wet with interviews and practice, you may want to put the programs you're most interested in earlier, so that if you get the opportunity to go to a place that you feel good about, you can accept it and not risk losing the spot or not even have to interview at other places you might be less interested in.
That's a great point for body specific. And anything related to breast?
Sure. Yeah, for breast, so I mentioned some of the things. So look at the modalities they offer. The volume is important. What fellow does, what residents do, and if they are asking you to sign the reports independently or not, that's something that you may want to consider. Some programs make you final sign towards the end of your year. Some programs pay a higher salary, like something between a fellow and attending. Some programs don't. So if that's something, it's important because you basically are taking on added liability. But at the same time, it gives you more confidence when you get out of training. So those are the things that you may want to clarify. The thing I want to warn you, or not warn, but a general thing to know, when you're interviewing for fellowship, it's 2 years away from when you actually start your fellowship, and a lot of things can change. So it happened to when I interviewed and when I started fellowship, section chief, half of the things were different. So it's fine. One institution doesn't change overnight, even if there are turnover of people, especially in breast nowadays. Everywhere is just so much turnover because of the job market. People leave for private practice, and people move up different ranks because of better opportunities. So you may not necessarily get what you were promised, or things might have changed. Then not for bad necessarily, but maybe different. The other thing is, if you are interested in research and the program is interested in research, there are RSNA grants for fellows. So if that's something you want to do, you kind of got to have an idea whether the program is supportive or not, or there are opportunities for you to get dedicated academic time, research time, and so usually when you interview, there is a fellow that talk to you or answer any questions you might have, but definitely reach out to them outside the official interview day to get more information, to ask a specific question and get a more useful response. Don't think whatever they are saying, that's it. It has happened to many people I know, that they were told something and then the actual thing that's happening might be different. So yeah, get in for information. So in terms of modalities, like for example, they may say, we're using, for example, contrast enhanced mammo, but when you actually get granular in terms of the number or volume or how much of their practice might be that newer modality, it may not be their mainstream, and you may not get necessarily the training you were looking for. So into those details, not the general thing. If that's important. So a lot of time those details are not important, but if that's why you are choosing that specific program, make sure that's exactly what's happening there. That's for breast, I think.
Great, thank you. And how does location matter in terms of like, since this is just like a one-year fellowship, does it matter where you do the fellowship location-wise, vis-a-vis where you see yourself working, or would you rather pick a program, that may not be, like the best program that you interviewed for, but you would prefer that just for the location because that's where you would want to stay longer term?
I think I start that, if that's okay. So location is really important, especially if you want to stay there. So if you want to stay there and your programs are in the same levels, definitely go to where you want to be. If you have family or if you want to practice in that region, it makes life so much easier, because if you want to stay in that specific program as attending, that's option. If you want to go to practices in the area, they have better connections to connect you or have better insight about what's going on in that region. In terms of licensing, you don't have to go through license multiple times, and it's such a pain. And moving, all sorts of things. So if there is a program in a specific geographic area you want to be at, and there's not much difference, definitely pick that. If your programs are in kind of a general, the same level, or some not that different, then it comes to the location, whether you want to stay in the region you're right now. It's different based on your family situation, your personal situation. I've seen people pick programs just for reputation, or they may say that if they're coming out of a smaller program, bigger name of the academic name, or better perceived reputation, may be something that might be helpful if you want to get into academics. But other than that, even that, I think it's not a big deal if there is a program that suits you better. With this job market in radiology, I don't think anyone has to go to a specific program to get the job they want. But it's different for everyone.
Great, thank you so much. I think we have about 15-20 minutes for audience questions, unless anybody is there. If any of you would like to say something that we have not covered so far before we move on to the audience questions. Okay, is there anyone in the audience who would like to ask any questions related to something that we had not covered yet or something that was not discussed?
I just add something. There was one point that someone brought up. It didn't apply to me, and it was not something that I checked. But I know some most fellowship programs, when you are on a contract, you're a W-2 employee. So basically, you get salary as an employee of that institution. There are some programs that sign you up as independent contractor. So you're 1099. Independent contractor. And apparently, because I didn't have loans here, so I'm not familiar with it. But if you're doing the loan forgiveness, PSLF, what is that thing? Yeah, that then you may not be qualified if you're 1099 independent contractor. This is at the bottom of your list when you want to think about it. But I know one of our fellows ran into this problem because he would qualify for that year as fellowship had he gone to a program with W-2 contract, but just something to keep in mind if that's important.
That's good to know, because I had no idea, and I'm on the PSLF track, and now I have to look into that.
And if there's a question that you can ask other fellows, I wouldn't bring it up to program director or program admins or faculty, but it's a good question to ask fellows if you want to get information.
Yeah, I just want to say, for final closing thoughts, if we don't have any questions, that, you're a resident now. You're not you're not a medical student competing for a residency position. And so you're in a position of leverage where the programs kind of need you. They might have options, but they still need you as an option. And so I would think your frame of mind should really start to be shaping around, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? And how will this place help me fulfill my goals? It's mutual. It should be just as much of them selling themselves to you as you selling yourself to them. So and also just residency's hard, and try not to be too hard on yourself. And I think everyone here, if you're attending this meeting, will likely get the #1 fellowship that you want. And so chin up, and if anyone has any questions about body specific or just in general, feel free to reach out by my email.
Great. Just one question that crossed my mind. Did any of you write any personal statement specific to that program? I mean, if you applied for just 2 or 3 programs, that makes sense. But if you're applying for larger number of programs, what take do you have on that?
No, I told you, I think the IDMC and MGH wanted their own, and I wasn't interested in doing that.
Kept most of the personal statement the same in the last paragraph when I mentioned the specific things about different programs if I wanted to specify it.
Great, thanks. And are any of you on visas? Because we had a question related to any visa issues that any of you might have faced. No. Oh, sorry.
Not what I know from talking to friends. So yeah, if you are already on J1 and you're subject to 2-year residency, then you got to make sure you're within those years. I know this happened to a friend that they would we go over the 7-year of J, so they definitely had to go to H1. The program that supports H1, So those kind of things, you got to make sure that works out. If you are already on H1 and you don't want to switch to J, try not to switch to J, because then you would get subjected to 2-year residency for that 1 year of fellowship. So it may not be worth it. So I know this far, I'm not, unfortunately, very familiar, but reach out to those who you know, either through your program or on Twitter or on other programs. Just find other people with similar backgrounds and issues to get advice about how to proceed or what would be best, because you or someone in your program may not know.
Great. Thank you so much. I'm just going to give like a few seconds for anybody else in the audience who would want to ask any questions. Oh, there's one question in the chat box. Does doing a neuro fellowship with a breast mini fellowship make a difference in the number of calls you will have to take as a neuro attending in private practice? As in, would you be expected to do less calls than your neuro trained radiologist?
I don't know. I interview for jobs now. I didn't specifically ask that question, but ones I don't think so. Especially if you're going to be in the partnership track, every potential partner had to take the same amount of calls, because it kind of goes with the idea of everybody being equal. So for that, I don't think so, though. I don't think you can take less call by being that, but you will be quite indispensable for the practice, though, if the job market ever turns down.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention about fellowship, doing multiple fellowship or matching it mini fellowship. So if you want to do a mini fellowship plus your fellowship, make sure your full year of fellowship is something that having a full year is important. So for neuro or breast, the trend is that they want you, if you want to work, especially in more subspecialized large private practices or in academia, it's important to have the full year of that fellowship under your belt. So make sure you get that as your actual fellowship. And then in your mini fellowship, if it's less than a year, then do the secondary one, basically. Some programs, they make you do additional rotations like ED or NUCs as a 4th year, so you may not be able to do 12 months of a fellowship. Some programs are different, like I'm here at MGH, they do a whole year of something as mini fellowship, so it's 12 months of that mini fellowship. So a lot of their residents, they don't even do fellowship, because during residency, they've done 12 months of something, and they go out and start practicing without spending another year. But that was not the case for us at Yale, and I'm sure it's not the case for a lot of programs. So if you're going to end up doing 8 months or 6 months of something, a lot of time you may be able to do maybe MSK. They're fine with MSK or body for 8 months, but usually it's harder for breast or for neuro. Right now, the job market is so good. If you have a couple of months of mammo, private practices would be fine. But it comes to your level of comfort and how comfortable you will be at your future practice.
Okay, thank you. All right. Just some closing remarks. Thank you, everyone. Thank you all the panelists for amazing insight and inputs and guidance that you all have provided. Thanks to all the participants for being a part of this. And this is successful because of you and your presence. And thank you. Most importantly, thank you everyone who is a part of the RFS of Radiological Society of Connecticut. They have made a lot of efforts in organizing this, and also special thanks to Jade and Faize to help us organize our first ever meeting or an event with the new council. And you have always been supportive, and your guidance has been invaluable throughout this transition process. So thanks everyone. All the best to those who are applying for fellowships. And well, that's a wrap. Thank you everyone. Have a good night. Take care.
Thanks, Ashwin.
Thanks, you guys did a great job.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a great night.
Thanks.
I'll drop my email in the chat for anyone who wants to reach out.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.